Okay. Well, good evening, graduate UNSY students. First, for everyone's awareness, we are recording this session. A copy is going to be made available for those who are unable to attend live. Next, for the format of tonight's meeting, I'm going to start by introducing our guest, who will discuss his connection to uncrewed aircraft system technology. After, I'm going to lead a series of introductory questions, and then we're going to open up to a class-wide Q&A. I ask that you all mute your mics, save any questions you might have to the end, and that you use the hand raise icon to indicate when you do have a question. I'll call on each of you in order. If you have any issues with your mics, switch over to the meeting chat and ask your question there. So with that, I am excited to welcome you to the 24th session of the UNSY Guest SME Speaker Series, the final of 3 for this term. I'm Dr. Brent Terwilliger, the Program Coordinator for the Master of Science in Unmanned Systems degree here at Embry-Riddle. Tonight, we are joined by our guest subject matter expert from MissionGo, RHenderson. Originally from Knoxville, Tennessee, Mr. Henderson is a Southern Maryland transplant. He attended the University of Tennessee, where he earned a BS in business. His UAS experience started several years ago with RC planes. Since then, Ryan has been involved in a variety of projects ranging from search and rescue, precision agriculture, counter UAS detection, data acquisition, maritime operations, and cinematography. Certified both as a manned and remote pilot, Ryan has hundreds of hours logged for both fixed-wing and rotary-wing aircraft, and has piloted UAS ranging from 250 grams up to 450 pounds. He's certified as both a private pilot and an FAA Part 107 UAS pilot, and was the chief pilot at the University of Maryland UAS test site. Further, Ryan has extensive knowledge in flight control systems, command and control links, and radio relay. He's a subject matter expert on airworthiness analysis and has participated in global operational deployments, including disaster-stricken and harsh environments. And with that, let's give a warm welcome to Ryan. I'll turn the stage over so he can tell us about his organization, as well as his experience and observations associated with this rapidly changing technology.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. I'm really excited to be here tonight and tell you a little bit about what we're doing at MissionGo in the uncrewed space. I'm going to bring up a little bit of a PowerPoint here to share with everybody. Let me see if I can get that up for you one moment. All right, and Brent, if you can give me the thumbs up, you can see the screen okay. And we should be full screen. Okay, there we go. Okay, so a little bit about MissionGo. MissionGo was founded in 2019, and we're in a variety of industries, which we'll talk about, along with some of the milestones that MissionGo has accomplished in really a short period of time. But in a nutshell, we offer 3 different services and 2 different products. And our services are in the cargo operations space, the utilities and infrastructure inspection space, and public safety and commercial UAS training. The 2 products that we offer are the MissionGo MGV 100 aircraft, which you can see in the picture there. It's a single rotor helicopter, and the Video Command Center, which we like to refer to as the VCC. I'll talk a little bit more about those things coming up. Now, as I mentioned, in our short tenure since 2019, we've accomplished quite a few things, some pretty big milestones, and several of them are actually historic in nature of what we've done regarding cargo delivery and others. So I'll talk about that here in just a minute, but there's kind of a high-level snapshot of kind of where we've been. A few of the awards that we're really proud of winning. If any of you have been to the Exponential Award, you may have heard our name, or Exponential Conference, excuse me, AVSI. You may have heard our name or seen us there, but there's a couple of big winners there. The Edison Award was a really big deal for us. And then just a small handful of the customers that we currently service today on the right side of the screen there. Here's a picture of our leadership Scott Plank. He's one of the founders of Under Armour and currently one of our primary investors. Chris Corgnati, our president. Tony Pucciarella, one of the founders of MissionGo. And I can also tell you that Tony and I go way back prior to my life here at MissionGo, being the chief pilot at UMD UAS test site. Tony was my director of flight operations there. And then on the far right of the screen, you'll see Dr. Joe Scalia, whom we'll talk about a little bit more coming up. But he was instrumental in that first human kidney for transport and transplant via UAS back in 2019. So a little more about those services that we offer. I had mentioned earlier the infrastructure inspection side, the cargo delivery side, and then of course the UAS training side. But first, we're going to talk about cargo. Here's a snapshot of the critical cargo milestones that, again, in a pretty short period of time, you can see we've done quite a bit. And by the way, and you can probably tell from the terrain, we did not do all of these things right here in our backyard, but really in several places across the country. So MissionGo, we really do get around. I'll talk about a little more of these in detail now. So in April of 2019, you'll see the aircraft on the right. That's a X8 configuration, custom built aircraft. And under that is not a research kidney, but a kidney for transplant. And a very, very brave woman by the name of Trina received that kidney that night of April 2019. And I'm happy to say that she's doing really well today. Now, Trina's really brave for a lot of different reasons. First of all, she was on dialysis for 8 years, and her window for dialysis was closing rapidly, and a match for that kidney came up. So, I think all of us would probably agree that you wouldn't want to chance anything. That was her kind of golden ticket to have a good quality of life and to survive. But beyond that, she showed bravery when asked to participate in this test of taking the kidney that she was going to rely on and putting it underneath this flying contraption and send it across the city of Baltimore to land on the helipad of the trauma center. And she did that for us, and we were very successful in doing so, and by the same nature, able to prove that this was feasible and it could be done. Now, something that we did alongside of just strapping the box or the kidney under this aircraft and sending it across, there was of course, a technological hurdle to prove that it could be done and it could be done safely. But then we also had to prove, in a regulation space, would we be allowed to do it? And the answer was yes. Very difficult to do. But then there's also that part about when you send an organ or tissue or, basically anything that's medical and critical, oftentimes you have a doctor or a medical professional that travels along with the specimen. It's really important when the specimen goes into the recipient that the doctor can absolutely know what has happened to that organ, what the condition of it is, because it's not something we want to find out after it's already in the person. So a revolutionary device that was a prototype at the time was installed onto the box, which monitored all of the intrinsic forces that were placed on the kidney during transit. And relayed that data in real time to all the stakeholders involved, to include doctors on both sides, all other medical staff, and even myself and our crews as the operators. So we all knew exactly what was happening with that organ as it was transported from A to B, something that was very, very important. So after we had done that flight, which was a fairly short flight, MissionGo was formed, and it was time to put the foot on the gas pedal and put this in the high gear. So we did a whole lot more research and a lot more testing, and we came up with the concept of using a single rotor helicopter. Now you might ask, well, why? What's so special about that? And I can talk a little more about the helicopter later, but in a nutshell, first of all, the helicopter is a proven design. It's extremely agile in high wind conditions, and it's fast and very efficient when in forward flight. So we adopted this design. It's based on an aircraft called the Velos Rotors UAS out of Greece, and we modified it to work with our application to include longer legs, better communications, and even a modified firmware so that the flight characteristics are what we want and expect it to be. So in 2020, we went to Las Vegas and we actually flew multiple flights there. And I'm not sure my slides will show it, but the one that you're seeing became the world's longest human organ transport of 10.3 miles across the desert. For all my pilots in the house here, it was flown under Part 107 rules, as we had to chase the aircraft in cars as it did its pre-programmed autonomous path. Another transport that we did in the Las Vegas area that's not depicted here is we actually transferred a cornea under the aircraft from one hospital to another hospital, showing the feasibility and viability of hospital-to-hospital transport. Fast forward again to 2021, we went up to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and carried the first pancreas and kidney. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be a doctor. I'm a pilot, but what our medical staff do tell me is that the significance of carrying a pancreas is that it is extremely sensitive to vibrations and other forces that act upon it. And so we did a lot of vibration testing and biopsy on the kidney and pancreas before and after this flight to understand what the real consequences or lack of were of transporting on uncrewed vehicle. In 2021, we worked with our local organ procurement organization, Living Legacy Foundation, to do a test about high-speed flight and transfer blood. Now, you can see on this particular aircraft, we have a much smaller payload package. That's because it's only carrying that small white box, which has, I don't know, 4 or 5 different blood vials in it. So Living Legacy Foundation on a daily basis travels between their office and a lab that's roughly about 7 miles, and they're doing this through downtown Baltimore. Now, if any of you have been in any sizable city, you're going to know that you're going to always have traffic. You're going to have traffic lights. You're going to have other type of factors that are going to slow you down. Well, as the crows flies, the direct line of sight between their lab and their office is only 5 miles. So if they'd been using a UAS to do these transports, they would not have to take the circuitous route of traffic in 7 miles. They wouldn't also have traffic in the sky, so they can go at a constant speed and direct line. So what we did is we flew a long series of flights for an entire day at only 5 miles per flight to see how many blood samples we could deliver, and the increased rate of what we could do was it's nearly 300%, I think 280% increase in efficiency and speed by using a high-speed helicopter and a direct line of sight over traditional modes of transportation. And then in February 2022, this was a really special flight and something that was quite an honor to accomplish, was we were invited to Window Rock, Arizona, to the Navajo Nation by the president and the vice president of the Navajo Nation to fly our helicopter at their sacred grounds called Window Rock. And Window Rock, for those that don't know, is essentially their Washington, D.C., their White House, all their governmental buildings. It's by invitation only that you would be invited and given the permissions to fly there. And we flew several flights demonstrating how this kind of technology could serve people in places that really need it. The people of the Navajo Nation sometimes and oftentimes live in areas that are unreachable, especially after any kind of rains and other kinds of weather. And the people have oftentimes medical needs that can't be addressed because you just can't get to them. So we carried multiple payloads that day with foods, with medicine, even snake bite venoms. They've got really awful snakes out there that, if you don't have that venom or that anti-venom or help relatively quickly, you will deteriorate really quickly. And we showed how you could have something so important to somebody in a very, very quick manner. And then we also even delivered veterinary medicine and supplies for their animals, because they are a people who live off the land. They live off their animals and their livestock, and to them, their livestock is their life. So it was really, really important that we could be able to deliver some critically needed items in a really short amount of time. And then in June of 22, we went to Birmingham, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit. And we partnered with a UAS UTM company called Airspace Link. And the whole purpose of this was to do 40 different flights over a series of 2 weeks. It was in a very urban area. It was really interesting. And for my other aviators that are in the house here, we were flying down a railroad corridor across the approach path of an airport, and luxury apartments to one side, grocery stores to the other side, busy highways. It was a very, very interesting operation, but it was important to show what we could do with an uncrewed system by delivering medical supplies on a routine basis. The data that we took during this included things like number of operators required, the time it took to fly, what was the overall cost of operating our all-electric helicopter with wear on the batteries, carbon footprint, and it goes on and on and on. So we really were able to create a solid case study as to how and why small uncrewed systems can be valuable and viable in a medical transport condition. And then more recently, in 2022, we went to Lubbock, Texas, and partnered with a group called the Matador UAS Consortium as part of a week of proof of concept operations. And we did many things here. I mean, we did the cargo delivery. I flew the helicopter 11 miles, actually, across the city of Lubbock, again, chasing a railroad track, and then flying and landing at the Reese Technology Center, which used to be a very large Air Force base. For those my military friends here may know about that. And then some of the other operations that we did was outreach to the public schools, elementary schools, high schools. We also included infrastructure inspection. We brought additional UAVs that have thermal cameras and other, and we did solar panel inspections. We did wind turbine inspections. And then we also flew over some pipeline as well. And so the idea is to raise awareness, to show what's possible with the uncrewed aircraft, and of course, get a lot of really young people excited about what we're doing. Now, back in Baltimore, our headquarters is located right on the Inner Harbor. And as you can see from this image, there's lots of different routes that we've created here. Now, the concept and idea is to create routes that can be used for a variety of different reasons for uncrewed aircraft, whether it's medical or perhaps one day, and you know, I don't think we're there yet, but you know, think of DoorDash and Uber Eats. You know, everybody wants a hamburger and they want it now, and they want their pizza and they want it now. And in our neck of the woods where we are, oysters and crabs are a really big deal. So I don't know, maybe we'll look into the future. Picture one of our aircraft landing on the crabber's boat and picking up the bushel and taking it direct to your door or the restaurant or wherever it might be. We're thinking a little bit in the future, but it's fun to dream. So the concept that you see here, up into the upper right side, you see the 3 H's. Those are some of our big medical centers there, one of them being UMMC on the far left. That's where I originally had delivered the kidney to. So if you can only imagine uncrewed aircraft flying simultaneously in a routine manner, and then taking this path to the southwest, which would head directly to BWI Airport. Now, while we can't do that today because of regulations, everything else is completely possible with our aircraft and others out there. The ranges, the terrain, the weights that we need to carry for these packages, which by the way, are typically 15 pounds and less. 98%, by the way, of logistics packages now, whether it's USPS, Amazon, UPS, FedEx, are all looking at that 5-pound box or less. So our aircraft is well capable of carrying that. But by opening up these type of corridors and establishing these routes, we're opening up a real possibility for commercial operations to occur. This is just a closer look of what our headquarters looks like. The yellow box over here is our actual building. And then what you see over here is a heliport, full-size heliport, To our knowledge, we're the only civilly commercial owned heliport on the East Coast. And we not only use this for our manned aviation operations, but we fly our uncrewed aircraft out of here as well. So yes, it is true. Uncrewed aviation and manned aviation can coexist peacefully in the same airspace. We do it all the time. The idea of this facility is to continue to expand, not only in the air side of things, but even the submersible side of things too, because we're located right on the inner harbor, which then opens into the Chesapeake Bay, and we've got a lot of space and opportunity to use autonomous systems here. Now, critical infrastructure inspections, I'll just tell you a little bit about that. We currently hold the largest infrastructure contract in the country. Our largest customer is Southern California Edison, and we are proud to say we just recently signed a $50 million 3-year contract on the West Coast. We currently are at 30 crews and growing to assess high fire risk areas and fire prevention. So, you know, a lot of people ask, what are you going to do with those drones? Are you taking pictures for real estate? Well, yeah, people do that. But what they a lot of times don't think about is that we're actually saving lives. And we're doing that through inspections of critical infrastructure, amongst other things. Primarily, our crews out there now are inspecting distribution lines and transmission lines, but that continues to expand and evolve as the crews grow and the utility companies begin to understand more and more what the power of uncrewed systems can do. Infrastructure and pipeline is another, I won't say untapped, but I would say largely untapped. In fact, the entire utilities industry is largely untapped because we have so much utility infrastructure, and so far the UAS market is relatively small in comparison, but the infrastructure for pipeline is a really big deal. And I'm not just talking about the pipeline that's under the ground or above the ground, but under the ground. There are hundreds and thousands of miles of underground pipeline that need to have situational awareness of what's on top of it if and when something were to happen. And UAVs are such a great tool to figure that and what's going on top of the ground. Here's a few pictures and images of other inspection items that we're involved with, from the wind turbines to the solar farms and even cranes. I don't have a picture here of bridges, but we've done that as well. Bridges, cranes are something that, you know, is an infrastructure across our entire country that needs constant monitoring and upkeep. And right now, the way we do it is a very, very manual way, and in some cases is quite risky to send a person up or under a bridge or up a crane. Of course, our uncrewed vehicles can do that with great precision and really high resolution. So we're really excited to bring that type of tool to the industry. And then, of course, the last sector of our company is training. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So a really big and important part to us is to continuously refine our training program and be the leader in training and bring that to whatever groups are in need of a certified and turnkey UAS program. Now, a large majority of our customers are law enforcement, but it doesn't stop there. We've trained the US Navy, groups of engineers, media, journalism. Washington Post is one of our largest media groups that we've trained. We've probably put 50 or 60 of their reporters and journalists to our program. So it goes on. And then, of course, for all of our pilots, as we ramp in our utility sector, we put them through the exact same training, of course, geared for the utility side. But the fundamentals of aviation and safety, crew resource management, and other remain the same across the board. And just a little bit more about our UAS training program. We have a 100% pass rate for our Part 107 students. We feel that we give them the tools and the correct expectations to get through the course and then to be successful. And I would say about 99% of the time, Everybody who goes through our hands-on course has already passed their 107. I mean, there's a few exceptions here and there, but everybody makes it through their 107 prior to their hands-on course where we're in the field flying. And just a few of our clients, everything, as I mentioned, Washington Post and Naval Air Systems Command, Maryland State Police, it goes on and on and on. Take a quick look, there'll be a test at the end. And then a little more about our products. So I mentioned our single rotor helicopter, the MGV 100. And a few things that really make this thing special is that it is all electric. It's very quiet. If any of you have flown some small drones, like say DJI Phantoms or Mavics, believe it or not, our 7-foot helicopter is much quieter with a lower rotating RPM main disc than 4 very high RPM propellers. It's also fully redundant. So that's something else that's really special. It makes it particularly well suited for carrying critical medical cargo like somebody's heart or kidney or pancreas. It has multiple motors, multiple speed controls, multiple actuators on the swash plate, multiple power sources, and it goes on and on. Any of those components can fail on this aircraft and be completely transparent to the performance of the aircraft. So in other words, we can have a full propulsion failure on one side of the aircraft, even at gross max takeoff, and continue to fly the aircraft without any problems. Of course, everything is redundant, including the communications and C2 links, and our operators on the ground are immediately flagged and notified if there's any kind of issues so they can take an appropriate action. And then our VCC is really a simple idea and design. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel, but the idea is no operator with a tiny little screen in their hands wants their entire mission staff and command staff hovering over their shoulder, telling them where to fly. So what the Video Command Center does is it relays the video and telemetry data from the controller and the aircraft to a very large screen. And command staff can then stand to the side with a bright, big screen, see in great detail what's going on and get all the information they need. And if they also would like to stream that in a very encrypted and secure way to anybody with appropriate credentials, that box can do that too. So command staff, or maybe it's an electric company with inspectors, can be sitting in their air-conditioned office while some of the operators are on top of the mountain in California. All right, so what's next for UAS? That is a question that we could probably spend the next week discussing, but for time's sake, I'm going to go straight to here. With the U.S. Power Grid and infrastructure inspection, you can see where we are now on the left by 2050 in the middle there, but I'm going to focus on the right side of the screen. We're projected to grow from $9.1 billion to $33.6 billion by 2030 in just North America. So there is so much to do with UAS right now, and so little people, so little aircraft, and so much imagination. And so I really appreciate everybody here. I'm looking forward to answering any questions. Let's see, how'd I do on time? Right about halfway. So I think we'll have plenty of opportunity to kind of go through and expand on some of the things that you heard about. I'll pass it over to you, Brett.
Thank you, Ryan. That was outstanding. And thank you for, that last slide. Do you mind going back one just so we can kind of see
Sure.
that this is what we have in front of us, where we're heading. This is tremendous growth opportunity. One of the things that we as a class discuss in our white papers and our projects and our research is that need to establish a perceived need, the problem statement. Well, right here is a key indicator of where this technology can be applied, why it is a good fit, and really the opportunities, the efficiency gains that can be realized. So folks, queue up your questions. I'm going to just toss a couple high-level ones over to Ryan, but then I'm going to pivot over to you. There's a couple in the chat that I'll start with, and then I believe we'll go to Mitch and Charles. So First, Ryan, what tools or resources do you tend to use to stay up to date? I know there's a lot of development, there's a lot of material that comes out. There's a lot of news releases that tend to focus on the growth of this sector, the opportunity. What is it that what strategies and what resources do you use to stay on top of all the material that's out there?
Well, that's a really good point. And I'll tell you that it's a struggle because as soon as you learn something, it's outdated by tomorrow. But a couple of the tools I use is number one, networking. I can't be everywhere all at one time, but I do have a vast network of resources and people that are always talking about this. So we are, as a group, we're living this. We're in it every single day. And there's so many facets to it as well. So for my network, I've got friends that are in the regulation space in the small UAS office. I'm also part of the Commercial Drone Alliance and the Drone Advisory Committee and all those, and I sit in on those. I try to participate where I can, but primarily I'm listening. I'm doing a lot of listening. So that's one way. Some of our favorite news articles, SUAS News and Dawn of Drones, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard of all these different groups. I am subscribed to all of them. And so I'm listening to those as well. Another great networking resource is our conferences, right? So the really big one that I had mentioned earlier, Exponential, of course, everybody loves Exponential. If you ever get an opportunity to go there, I highly recommend it. And if you're not having to go there and man a booth, which is usually what I have to do, if I can sneak out of my booth, what I really enjoy doing is going to the panels, sitting in on the panels, listening to various professors and other industry people speak, seeing what the new inventions are in technology with autonomy is really, really exciting. And then the other way that we learn a lot about what's going on is actually through our customers, right? So customers and clients, they also have demands. They have needs. For example, Southern California Edison, they're a power company. They're not a drone company. So that's why they came to us. So we learn a lot from them, what their problems are, and then we help to inform what the solution to that is. And then again, we go back to our networks and we bring in groups from all over the place, and not just the United States, but we have software partners, hardware partners from all over the world that we pull together the best of the best to make the solution right.
Outstanding. That's really good information to kind of get to that motivation. What recommendations do you have to those students who might be new to the field and looking to establish a career in UAS?
Yeah, sure. That's really good. So, one of the questions that I'm asked many, many times is how did you get into this? How did you get to what you're doing now? And, I think most people that know me understand that I really love what I do. And I think like anything in life, it's really important that you do something that you love. So when it comes to uncrewed systems, I think one of the most beneficial things I can tell somebody is first of all, you need to understand what you love to do. And then you need to figure out how can an uncrewed system or autonomous system of any kind, whether it's a submersible or a rover or an aircraft, fit into that. So many times, and I can't begin to tell you how many times, we have a customer that, say, a Washington Post journalist who is now, and never in their wildest imagination, thought they would be a certified Part 107 remote pilot flying an aircraft and dealing with airspace and dealing with waivers and the FAA, but they absolutely love it. But their first passion is writing and journalism. And then the same thing goes with our law enforcement officers. We've got SWAT teams and canine officers that absolutely love what they do, helping communities, but then they never realized and dreamed that they would be flying drones doing it. And so just about every facet of what we do as a society in our community probably has some tie to uncrewed aircraft. I think it's really important that you're finding your passion, and if you do that along with the uncrewed aircraft, you're really going to enjoy whatever it is, wherever it takes you.
Great. I'm gonna flip over to the meeting, the meeting chat right now, and starting with Stephen had a couple of questions that tied into your slide decks. The first one is on slide 15. He asked, why isn't there a blue line for routes established hospital to hospital? Would that be a viable option with UAS as a transit means?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. And for the purposes of that slide, I think in a different a customer presentation, the idea was to get international and national payloads from BWI to the hospitals in a really quick manner. Because today, what happens is, and a lot of people don't know this, but the organ procurement organization, while sometimes they find the organs locally, oftentimes they will come from a completely different place. And believe it or not, these kidneys oftentimes will ride in the belly of, say, Delta Airlines or Southwest, or pick one big carrier, and they go arrive at the airport, and they sit kind of like we do when we get in an airport and our baggage is going around the carousel. Now, they get a little extra special treatment. They go to a different luggage handling place, but they often will sit there sometimes for up to 24 hours before a courier is dispatched to that airport to pick up the kidney and take it the rest of the way. So our thought and concept is that every major airport, which are most oftentimes situated around big cities, should have some type of vertiport, uncrewed port that is dedicated to this type of work. So the organs can come directly off of the aircraft, can be loaded onto the small uncrewed aircraft, and you push the button and it makes a very quick and direct line to the hospital and the patients that are waiting.
Great. Stephen did also ask a question about slide 16. He was curious about what percentage of functionality is your marked vertiport.
I'm sorry, say that last portion.
What percentage of functionality is your vertiport? And Stephen, if you're on, if you want to offer some.
Right. So as far as manned aircraft, it's 100%. There's an aircraft going all the time in and out of there day and night. For the uncrewed, it's still in a research mode. And the primary reason for that is regulation. Regulations for cargo delivery, and definitely when it comes to hazmat cargo, is not quite there yet. Maybe many of you have heard of the company Matternet. Matternet just received the first type certification in the United States for small uncrewed aircraft. And at this time, there's a little bit of a question mark as to what they can and will be able to do with that. The FAA has come a really, really long ways in certification, and again, our Part 107 regulations. There's more on the way. Keep your ears open for Part 108. But as far as certification and airworthiness criteria, there's still a little bit of a question mark going on. Associated elements is a portion of the certification that, just to my understanding, went back into legal with the FAA. So what MissionGo is doing right now is we are preparing to establish the corridors. We're preparing to establish the operations and procedures, while at the same time working with the FAA for when the time comes and certification is ready. We will have everything in place and be well positioned to start operating commercially.
Wonderful. Joe asks, what design and engineering challenges were experienced when using a single rotor UAS that has a collective and cyclic, or in other words, a collective cyclic pitch mixing, CCPM, rather than a variable RPM that's standard on, say, a multi-rotor?
Yeah, well, I think some of the challenges are exactly the same challenges as a full-size helicopter has. So there's the tuning piece of it. There's vibrations to deal with. fact, we're working with a company called Cooler Technologies, spelled Kulr, and they make the big helicopter sensors that are extremely high precision. And they're now designing sensors that are much smaller with the same or higher precision to put on our helicopter to help the tuning even further than it is. As far as, I guess the other design challenges, one of the big ones was the redundant propulsion and the transmission with the one-way bearings, belts, and dual motor design. The original designer of that did such a really great job with that. There's been a few things that we've had to change as we put it through the abuse test. We've done over 1,000 hours of run on here to find all the weak spots. We did find some things like some bearings and some shaft sizes and let's see, crush washers that needed to be just a little bit thicker and some small things like that. But we flushed most of those things out. So it's been quite a road. We've put thousands of hours on these helicopters just in the last few years over several different airframes. And yes, we have put a few of them in the ground and into the water, but that's what we're doing. It's all about testing. It's all about hardening. It's all about making an aircraft that will be viable for certification. And if anyone knows about FAA certification, it's one of the most difficult and grueling races known to man. So it's a pretty high challenge that we've taken on here, but we're up for it.
So do you auto rotate? Do you have that capability with your single rotor platform?
So yes, it can auto rotate, and right now we've done it manually, and it actually works really well. The blade aspect that we have is so wide, it picks up its own RPM very, very quickly in an auto rotation, and it's super agile, and it floats to the ground. It's really pretty easy. But I am excited to say that we're in testing now with a new piece of firmware that's going to add a fully autonomous auto rotation to the mix. It's really, really close. I expect that we'll be testing that probably in Q4 of this year.
Outstanding. All right, we've got a whole bunch of questions coming in on meeting chat. And folks, I do want to encourage you, you can ask the questions live as well. So I'm going to go to the next one from Rajesh. Can you please speak about some of your experience with precision agriculture? What equipment was used? What specific aspects of agriculture made the use case?
Okay, yeah, great question. So that was way back in the day. And what I did is I took a regular Canon camera and I removed the infrared filter inside the camera so that we can capture that infrared spectrum. And then from there, we were able to do NDVI images and understand the health of the plants a little bit better. Following on to that, I started doing experimentation with the MicaSense Red Edge camera and Sequoia cameras a little bit with the multispectral cameras there for much of the same purposes and ideas. One would be to spot health of vegetation before it was visibly seen by the human eye. And that way farmers and the agriculture industry could better understand what they needed to do before it was too late or the vegetation was too far stressed. Some of the other application that we use the MicaSense Red Edge camera for was to spot algae blooms. I did work alongside of the USDA up here in Maryland to fix those cameras to various different types of aircraft, both multi-rotor and fixed wing, to fly over water areas and spot the algae blooms. So that was a really big thing. And then we also did a project with them and rice paddies that were rice, I'm going to get that wrong. That's too long ago. I lost it. I purged that information. Something to do with a rice vegetation in water that was perhaps invasive in that particular area. But we use those cameras to be able to spot them. And after the data was processed, they could filter down and see exactly where, how much, and then do subsequent flights to do comparisons to see what the change in delta is.
Great. So Donna asks, I see you're pursuing a Part 135 certification. how far along in the process are you? And I don't see any Part 107 waivers, which is very unusual. Why is that?
So, okay, let me go back to the first question about the Part 135. So Part 135 only comes after type certification, and we are still in the type certification race. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of delays and questions with the FAA right now regarding certification and how actually to go about that. With only one aircraft type certified right now, being Matternet, there's a long ways to go, and we're one of those that's in the queue as well. So after certification, the 135 application will come. We're working on the 135 in parallel, but technically we can't do anything with the 135 until we have the type cert done. The Part 107 waivers, we have had Part 107 waivers. They've now all expired. At this time, everything we're doing is inside of the Part 107 rule set, and we haven't had a need to go beyond that. If we needed to do that, something like that, we could. Particularly, we may be exploring doing some one-to-many operations, or some people like to refer to it as swarming, later on in this year. So stay tuned.
Great. Lindsay asks, do you have any unique provisions within your certificate of waiver or authorization, your COA, that support your company's mission?
Well, right now, all of our flights are done strictly under Part 107. In the past, my past life with the University of Maryland, we operated under several different waivers, and one of those was for the operation of the kidney. At that time, flying at night was not a part of the 107 curriculum or rule set. So we had a waiver to that. And then we had a couple of other waivers operating in the Class Bravo for BWI. And then I guess I should also add, in addition to the waiver, I didn't mention this earlier, but it was such a monumental task to get that flight done. There was over 400 people that was involved in that very short flight, to include the Office of Emergency Management, the Baltimore Police Department, the entire medical community for the UMMC, which is Maryland Medical Center, along with the FAA as well. So it was a really big ordeal.
Lindsay, I see you popped your hand up. Do you want to just go ahead and ask your follow-up?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Hi, I'm Lindsay Johnson, but yeah, I wasn't sure, just given the audience that you support, as far as some of the folks that you contract with, if you operate under their COA when under their operational control, even even though you're following Part 107 rules, and if you're not, then things like doing wildland fire protection and looking at infrastructure, does that mean then that you can't operate within a TFR and support some of the critical infrastructure inspections if there's something active like an incident?
So 99% of everything we do is fire prevention, and not necessarily fire, live action fire disaster type situations. We have operated under a TFR. In fact, we've operated under TFRs for Southern California Edison for some of the demonstration testing of beyond visual line of sight flights. We flew 40 miles of power line. That was, it's not a direct 40-mile linear site, but it was 40 miles in circuits in beyond visual line of sight in an established TFR by Southern California. So we have done it. If we need to do it again, we certainly can.
Well, connecting into the fire piece, I'm going to call on Mitch. I suspect he may have a fire-related question.
Thank you, Dr. Twilliger. Hi, Ryan. My name is Mitch. My question, you were talking about being in Michigan, flying your routes. And I was curious to know, you had said that you were flying railroad corridors. So I am on a public safety committee for getting drones in public safety. I'm a battalion chief here in Columbus, Ohio, for the fire department. And when we start talking about the corridors that you're flying, I suspect you were using those because of their they're predictable. Is that why you were using those corridors?
Yeah, that's a big piece of it. Again, we are pretty crafty when it comes to trying to pull off things that are under 107, yet are still within the risk mitigation and safety matrix of our operations. So the concept there in Detroit was that we flew from the top of a parking garage, which was located directly on a railway, and then 1 mile down a railway that where we flew had no crossings at all. And then the medical system lab was located just on the other side of the railway, completely adjacent to the property. So we were able to establish a visual line of sight from both sides of the operation and mitigate flight over people and traffic by utilizing the railway easement as we went down.
Perfect. I know that they have the drone as first responder program going on out in Truckee, California, and I've heard other people doing that as well. But that would be very interesting because here in the city of Columbus we have direct north-south rail lines, east-west. So I think that would be a really good a way to accomplish it. So thank you so much for bringing that up. I appreciate your time, and this has been a great presentation. So thank you very much.
Yeah, of course, Mitch. And on that note, I would like you to, if you haven't already, keep your eyes and ears open for what Texas is doing and the Matador Consortium in combination with BNSF Railroad and Watco Railroad. Of course, we know that BNSF has been a leader and a pioneer in using uncrewed systems. And they were the first ones to get the very long BVLOS waiver, and they continue to fly hundreds and hundreds of miles per day with fixed wing VTOLs over their railway. I had a really unique opportunity to actually ride in a high rail car back in November and chase my helicopter for 11 miles around the city of Lubbock. So it was, it's unique and it's different. Perhaps utility easements and railroad easements will become, a viable thing for BVLOS at some point in time.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I wrote down the Matador Consortium. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
All right, George.
Okay. Hi, Ryan. Thanks for coming and sharing with us tonight. Everything you guys are doing at MissionGo. I had two questions. One of them I'm just going to skip. The other one I'm actually more interested in. You initially spoke about your data detection device that you put on the original kiddie transport box. What was the amount of data that you collected off of that device? Was that a greater amount of data that you would have gotten, say, from the doctor or from a human carrier? And are you continuing to employ that data collection device both on organ transport boxes, and are you using it for anything else?
George, I'm so glad you asked me that question because I did not really cover and include our sister company called MediGo, MEDIGO. And if anybody tells any of my bosses I left that part out, I will deny it. But MediGo is exactly what the original tracking system has grown into be. Originally, they called it a HOMEL, HOMEL. I don't recall what that stood for. But today we have MediGo. And MediGo utilizes these trackers as part of a very large custody chain logistics solution for end-to-end logistics and communication. And so today, what happens is that particular tracker will travel along with the organ, and it will have a system that every single stakeholder in the logistics chain will have instant knowledge of where that organ is, what's happening to it, and communication with every other stakeholder inside the chain. So if that, and remember, this is not just for drones. This can be for, whether it's JetBlue and a courier and a Sprinter van or whatever. a guy carrying it under his shoulder the last mile, whatever it is. But now everybody is fully aware of what's happening, where it is, and if somebody needs to get in touch with that person with a very simple app, they can call that person immediately and know where it is. And then beyond that, it takes it one step further and uses AI to do forecasting and prediction of where that is, where it's going to go, and even choosing the best method of travel for that organ, whether it could be a drone or it could be one flight or another flight based on weather, based on delays, based on, what have you. So it's a super, super smart system, and I would encourage everybody to go check it out. MediGo I think it's IO also. MediGo, put in MediGo, it'll come right up.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That sounds like amazing technology that you guys started and have continued to use. Appreciate it.
Thank you, George.
So I'm going to return to the meeting chat. We've got a couple here from Shelley. What are the regulatory barriers that you're running into, and what is the plan for tackling these? And then are you running into increased liability when transporting human organs?
Yeah, so right now, all of the human organs we're doing, this is with the exception of the very first one, which was done under the University of Maryland while I was there as research. So human organs for an industry transport on crewed aircraft, not there yet. We're getting there. Again, it's going to require type certification, airworthiness, 135 with hazmat. It's still a little bit down the road. If I could put in a nutshell what the two big regulation hurdles are that we're really facing right now, it's beyond visual line of sight flight, and it's flight over people and moving traffic. And until we get those things, we're going to have to do the crazy things we're doing today, like flying over rivers and chasing them with railroad high rails. And we've chased our aircraft with helicopters, manned helicopters flying beside it for miles and miles. Like, we've done these things for years now. We've proven that the aircraft can do these things. It's all about the FAA maturing the regulations and getting through some of these knotholes of airworthiness, which are 100% geared for crewed aircraft. We're trying to figure out together, FAA and industry, how to make this work in the best and safest way possible.
That makes a lot of sense. Lindsay asks, have you experienced any challenges when working near electrical or communication repeater towers within the urban interface?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is yes. And even with not just like repeater towers and communication, but the high voltage lines we work with lines that are 500 kV at the upper end, and our utility customer has very strict policies on the standoff distance. But the truth of the matter is that they have these standoff distances, and they're a little bit of a shot in the dark of, we think that looks good. So there's still a lot of research to really be done with the aircraft and the equipment. What is the standoff distance with the various magnetometers are out there? Is there ways to better harden the systems? And then the communications piece also, yes, absolutely. Whether you're talking a direct RF link or you're talking a cellular link of some type. I think many people in here probably heard the big hoopla over the launch of 5G, and what that did sent ripples and shockwaves through the aviation community, and what that is going to do to laser altimeters and so on and so forth. So we use 5G, and we're trying to fly around some of these 5G towers. So yes, it is absolutely part of our risk assessment every time we fly. We've never had any, flyaways or incidents or mishaps because of it, but we do know that it is a risk factor, and it's something we have to continue to explore and understand.
Brian asked the question, what sets MissionGo's UAS solutions apart from other options on the market? How do they provide a competitive advantage to their clients?
Well, one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is the fact that everything we do is based on manned aviation principles and safety. So, we've been called out in different ways because even in the early days, we were the ones that showed up with hard hats and high-vis vests and orange cones everywhere and caution tape. And we had pre-flight checklists. We have crew resource management training, and we're doing all this. And at the same time, some of our competitors are just showing up with their aircraft. They open the box and throw it in the air, and they go. And we just have never taken that route. So everything we do is risk-based. It's we have a manned aviation safety culture, and so far that has really proven to us to take us a long ways. Case in point, the largest utilities infrastructure contract in the country.
Great. Well, then we have one final question from Lindsay. Based on how your operations fall within Part 107, do you have specialized training for your VOs, your visual observers?
Yes, we do. Visual observer training is right in there beside the Part 107 training. They have a whole section for them. And not only do we have, so let me go back for my training. We have what's called an LMS, or learning management system, that is specifically geared to everything we do for Part 107, also visual observers. And then to take it one step further, we have kind of peripheral type training for utility and even crew members for medical, because we realize that when we start delivering organs, it's not just about the pilots and the visual observers, but actual medical crew and staff that's going to have to give and receive these organs to and from the flight crews. So yes, we absolutely do have VO training amongst others in the mix with everything else.
I want to ask one more quick question on your training tools and resources before we wrap up. Do you use any modeling and simulation tools? Or are you just using more or less scenarios with your actual operational airframes?
Really depends on what we're doing. If it's the utility infrastructure, almost all of that flight right now is very manually done. The pilot is in very close proximity to the infrastructure. They're not flying beyond visual line of sight in most cases, so they're flying manually. Now, when we do the cargo delivery demonstrations and tests, absolutely, we simulate and model all those things out. We fly them in the sim, we go on site and also match the sim and the modeling to what we see in real life to make sure that everything is going to operate as expected. And then even when it comes in the earlier days, when we were doing tuning and testing of the helicopter, we would put new parameters and firmwares into the sim first and vet it as much as we possibly could before we actually put it up in the air.
What software are you using in your simulation, and as well as your mission planning and your inventory management?
Yeah, so for the helicopter, the MGV 100, we use the tried and true Mission Planner right now. A lot of people are familiar with Mission Planner. It really, really works great. And we actually have an Embry-Riddle graduate student right now working on a project that is going to be creating a version of Mission Planner very specific to the helicopter that's going to address a lot of human factor things. So thank you to Embry-Riddle and our colleague for putting that together. Now, as far as inventory goes, I want to mention one more thing. Everybody can look it up. It's called alarispro.com, and we use alarispro.com for all of our fleet management and logging of our entire fleet. So every single aircraft that we have, pilots log into that, and it will track every component on every aircraft down to the minute, and also do predictive failure modeling so we can keep our fleet healthy and safe.
Wonderful. Well, really, I want to just say thank you to Ryan for joining us tonight. I want to thank everybody for attending. Ryan, thank you for sharing your perspective, your thoughts regarding UAS technology. This has just been such an informative session, and it really helps us to better understand the growth and advancement of this technology, as well as get a better informed perspective on opportunities that are starting to build and grow. To the students in the class, please remember to put your brief statements together and post them to the discussion board by Sunday. I should have our recording from this session uploaded to the discussion area by tomorrow. With that, thank you again, Ryan, for coming tonight and speaking to us. And I really hope I get a chance to meet you at Exponential with some of my colleagues from Embry-Riddle. We'll probably have a booth. I'll definitely be there presenting and sitting on a panel.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, thank you for having me. Thank you everyone for listening. And certainly I will be at Exponential. So if anyone is there, please stop by the booth and track me down. I would love to visit. Thanks to everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone. I'm going to stick around in case anybody has any questions about classwork or anything for this final week.
Thanks, Ryan.